You're lying, Ben. And worse, you know you're lying. The room fell completely silent. Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. Her words sliced through the air with the precision of a surgeon's blade. Ben Shapiro, for once, blinked. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The tension in Studio 12 was no longer just political. It was electric. The crowd leaned forward, some covering their mouths. This wasn't your average debate anymore. This was the moment everything shifted. How did we get here? How did a live-streamed panel on education reform turn into a scandal that would explode across every newsfeed in America? What happened behind the scenes before Jasmine Crockett walked onto that stage? Calm, composed, and carrying the full weight of a truth that would rattle the very foundations of the show. Let's rewind. The town hall was supposed to be civil. That's what the producers promised. Tough conversations, but respectful, they said. Jasmine had been invited as the voice of progressive politics, sharp, articulate, and rising fast. Ben Shapiro, of course, needed no introduction. Conservative firebrand, fast-talking intellectual, and master of the soundbite. But Jasmine had done her homework, and she knew Ben would come for blood. 15 minutes in, the show's host posed a question about systemic inequality in public schools. Ben leaned forward, fingers laced. Systemic? That's a convenient excuse. Poor schools aren't failing because of racism. They're failing because of personal choices, bad parenting, and liberal policies that reward dependency. A few audience members clapped. Jasmine let the applause die. Then she tilted her head and spoke calmly. So when my mother worked 3 jobs to pay our rent, was that a personal choice? Or when my school had no AC but the one 3 miles away had MacBooks for every student? Was that just bad luck? Ben jumped in. I'm not saying your experience isn't valid. But you are, she cut him off. You always do. You weaponize anecdote when it supports your side, then call it emotion when it challenges you. The crowd stirred. Phones were recording. Ben tried to steer it back. The data, she raised a hand. Don't quote numbers at me unless you're ready to explain why they were collected through biased institutions that never saw people like me as equals. You want to talk data? Let's talk funding per student in majority Black districts. He looked to the moderator, but the host stayed silent. This was Jasmine's floor now. You talk about merit like it's handed out in a vacuum, like your success didn't come from systems designed to prefer you. Ben's mouth twitched. That's an unfair characterization. Is it unfair? She said, voice low and unwavering. Or is it just finally being heard by someone who isn't afraid to say it out loud? The audience was locked in, what no one in that room yet knew, not Ben, not the moderator, not even the viewers at home, was that Jasmine had come with a folder. A physical folder. Yellow. Labeled Ben Shapiro Education Trust. Internal memo. And inside it, something that would make headlines for weeks. But more on that in a moment. For now, she sat back in her chair. Calm, ready. Because tonight wasn't about shouting louder. It was about proving that the truth, when delivered by someone who's lived it, doesn't need to yell. It just needs a mic. And Jasmine Crockett had the floor. If you're with Jasmine so far, drop your thoughts below. The comments are yours. Ben shifted in his seat. He was used to winning. Used to rapid-fire logic, overwhelming his opponents with statistics and surgical comebacks. But something about tonight was different, and everyone in Studio 12 could feel it. Jasmine Crockett wasn't reacting. She was leading. Her eyes were steady, her tone never cracked. And now, as she calmly reached into her leather satchel and pulled out that yellow folder, the entire studio held its breath. Before we go any further, she said, holding the folder up, I want to address something that's been bothering me since I accepted this invitation. The moderator blinked. Go on. She opened the folder slowly. A single sheet of paper slid out onto the table. It was a scanned internal email, redacted in parts, but still legible. Ben's eyes flicked to it. His lips parted, just slightly. Jasmine looked right at him. This is an internal memo from the Education Policy Institute, an organization that you, Ben, have been consulting for. It outlines a strategy to push what they call optics-friendly narratives in media appearances. You know what that means? Ben cleared his throat. I don't have anything to do with messaging strategy. Oh, but your name is right here, she interrupted, tapping the corner. Ben Shapiro, Media Liaison, Southern Campaign Strategy. The audience erupted in whispers. The moderator leaned forward. Ms. Crockett, are you alleging that Mr. Shapiro has been involved in manipulating public education discourse through coordinated messaging? I'm not alleging, Jasmine replied. I'm showing you. She laid out a second document. It was a set of talking points, neatly bullet-pointed, labeled "Do not deviate from these statements." Jasmine read aloud. Avoid systemic framing. Shift blame to individual behavior. Use language like personal responsibility and culture of effort. When challenged with personal stories, pivot to data that isolates economic factors. Then she looked up. This isn't a debate, it's a performance. And you've been following a script, Ben. He chuckled, shaking his head. These are standard policy notes. Every political team has strategy documents. That doesn't prove anything. But you didn't disclose your role. You presented yourself as an independent voice. That's dishonest, she said. People at home deserve to know when they're being sold a narrative dressed up as objectivity. A young woman in the audience raised her hand. Can she post that memo? Like, online? Jasmine smiled faintly. Already did. It's public now. The moderator leaned back, visibly stunned. Ben glanced at the cameras, and for a brief moment, the usual confidence in his posture wavered. You don't win debates by talking fast, Ben, Jasmine continued. You win them by telling the truth. And the truth is, you came here thinking I'd be easy to steamroll. But I came prepared. I've lived this system, I've studied it, and I know how people like you twist it. Off silence. Even Ben didn't interrupt this time. You want to talk personal responsibility? She asked. Let's talk about the responsibility you have when you sit in front of millions of viewers and shape how they see Black children, poor families, struggling schools. Do you feel it? That weight? Because I do. Every single time I speak. The camera caught a close-up of her hand resting over the documents. Steady, open, undeniable. This wasn't just a political moment. This was Jasmine Crockett refusing to play by the old rules and daring the room to ask why those rules ever existed in the first place. If you've ever felt silenced, misrepresented, or just plain ignored, tell us your story below. People are listening now. Ben was quiet. That alone was headline-worthy. The usual rhythm of his responses, fast, layered, relentless, had stalled. And Jasmine wasn't rushing in to fill the silence. She let it hang there, let the truth settle into every corner of Studio 12 like smoke after a fire. The moderator finally cleared his throat. Mr. Shapiro, would you like to respond? Ben straightened. Sure, I would. His voice was calm, too calm. I've never denied being affiliated with policy organizations, he began. But to frame this as some kind of orchestrated deception? That's absurd. I'm not responsible for how people misinterpret political messaging. My job is to advocate ideas that work. That's it. Jasmine didn't move. She just raised an eyebrow. Ideas that work? For whom? Ben gestured sharply. For the country. No, Jasmine said. You mean for the part of the country that already feels comfortable. The part that doesn't have to think about broken elevators in public housing or teachers buying their own whiteboard markers. The part that treats survival as an academic topic. He leaned forward. That's emotional rhetoric, not logic. No, she said, her voice level. That's lived reality. And I'm tired of having to translate it into your version of logic just to be taken seriously. The crowd murmured again, louder this time. A few people clapped. Ben turned to the moderator. I don't come here to be accused of bad faith. No, Jasmine interjected. You come here with a script designed to make your opponent sound radical for asking basic questions about fairness. She turned toward the audience. You want radical? Here's radical. Asking why a kid's zip code predicts their life expectancy. asking why the same mistakes that bankrupt rich men are called entrepreneurial spirit but land poor women in jail, asking why truth has to come in a three-piece suit with a Harvard citation to be taken seriously. Jasmine paused. And asking why men like Ben get to gatekeep what counts as fact while ignoring the mountain of stories, pain, and policies that don't fit neatly into a spreadsheet. Ben opened his mouth to reply, but she wasn't done. You say you're about facts, Mainchi said, but facts without context are weapons, and you've been wielding them like a sword against the people who never got the luxury of neutrality. He tried to speak again, but this time the moderator stepped in. Mr. Shapiro, he said quietly. Let her finish. Ben blinked, startled. It was the first time all night the moderator had interrupted him. Jasmine turned back to the table. She slid the folder aside. I don't need props, she said, because the truth doesn't need stage lighting. She gestured to the audience. These people here, they're not here for a show. They're here because they're tired of being told their struggles are fiction. They're here because they've seen what your version of meritocracy really means. She leaned in slightly. They're here because the old language of power doesn't scare them anymore. A hush spread across the room. Ben swallowed. He glanced at the cameras again, but this time the confidence in his shoulders was gone. In its place was something else. Uncertainty, doubt. And Jasmine? She wasn't angry. She wasn't even smug. She was calm. Because she hadn't come to win a debate. She had come to end one. If you're tired of truth being edited to fit someone else's comfort, leave a comment. Your voice is part of this. There was no shouting, no interruptions, no dramatic storm-off, just silence, the kind that meant something had shifted, permanently. Ben Shapiro sat stiffly in his chair, eyes fixed on the table in front of him. The camera light above him blinked red, still live, still recording. But this wasn't his stage anymore. It belonged to Jasmine. She didn't gloat. She didn't grandstand. Instead, she looked at the audience, really looked at them. Students, workers, teachers, single mothers, immigrants, faces that had heard variations of the same message for years. You're not enough. You're the problem. You're lucky to even be at the table. But tonight, Jasmine didn't ask for a seat. She took the table. Let me be clear, she said quietly. This isn't about embarrassing a man on television. This isn't about left versus right. This is about truth. And who gets to define it? She turned to Ben. You came here with charts, formulas, and a voice trained to talk over dissent. And yet, when faced with facts that make you uncomfortable, when I showed your name on that memo, you pivoted, minimized, deflected. He opened his mouth. She held up a finger, not to silence him, but to pause him. For once, she said softly, just listen. The audience was still. Even the moderator leaned in slightly, as if not to disturb the air. You say you're about personal responsibility, she continued. So take some. Own that the words you speak don't just float in the air. They land. On classrooms, on policies, on people. She pulled a letter from her folder, handwritten, creased at the corners. This is from a teacher in Jackson, Mississippi, she said. She wrote it after watching a segment where you claimed teachers were overpaid babysitters. Her students saw it. They laughed. Not because it was funny, but because they thought maybe she wasn't worth respect anymore, she read. Every day I feed my students. I buy their pencils. I walk some of them home. I grade until midnight. But after what he said, I felt smaller. I felt invisible. Jasmine folded the letter back up. You never met her, but your words did. Ben sat still. No defense came. The moderator whispered, We have 2 minutes left. Jasmine nodded. Then she faced the camera. Not the audience, not the moderator, not even Ben. She looked into the lens, into the homes of millions watching. You don't have to agree with everything I say. But if you care at all about this country, you have to start questioning the people who keep telling you to blame the powerless for the pain they never caused. She stood. We don't need louder voices. We need braver ones. A beat. Then the audience stood too. Applause didn't explode. It rose slowly, like a wave building strength. People weren't just clapping, they were thanking her. Ben remained seated. And Jasmine? She didn't look back. She walked off the stage with her folder in hand, truth trailing behind her like a banner. No victory lap, no slogan. Just a woman who told the truth and let the silence speak for itself. If that moved you even a little, hit subscribe. Or better yet, write something down. Speak up. Because the next voice they try to silence might be yours.